channel. My name is Fernando. This is a channel dedicated to the young professionals and students currently pursuing engineering. Today I'm happy to have another guest on the channel. This is
Vinueza.
And he's going to be sharing a little bit about his background, his education, and the things that he's doing now in his career. Andres has a degree in computer engineering, not computer science. Mm-hmm. All right. And he's going to be talking about the difference there. The goal on this video, if you guys jump in here, I'm going to have the timestamps at the bottom of the description, and you guys will be able to jump back and forth on some of the questions that we're going to talk about. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started, and let's let people know who are you?
So thank you for having me here and hosting me. My name is Andres Vinueza. I study computer engineering at Clemson University, and currently I'm an iOS developer for this company called Visible, which is the nation's first wireless carrier, all wireless carrier.
I guess for us simple folks who are not in the tech world, what does that mean?
So essentially, Verizon decided to try out something completely new. And what if we have a wireless provider that doesn't have any like brick and mortar stores? Essentially, what if it's all digital? Essentially, you buy your service on the website, you find it on an app, you get your SIM through like a mailbox, and all your customer care happens through a chat of some sorts or voice if you're calling at a calling center.
Do you think that's like a cultural thing that we're just moving in that direction? Or is that just like a new, like, why do you think that became a thing?
No, it's definitely a cultural thing as technology has expanded. You know, like how do we just provide better service and faster service to people? And, you know, now we have instant messaging, video calls and everything. So why not just take that even to, you know, like the product of wireless carriers? So Verizon was like, let's create this concept of Visible, who is simply going to provide an easy service, low payment, $40 a month to essentially, provide great quality on the Verizon network, and it's super affordable. So, we have kind of like put out different features that just kind of makes it a little bit different than most of your budget carriers that have a lot of other bad qualities to them. So we're trying to be the best in that field, in all the aspects.
So what do you think is like the toughest thing for client onboarding?
Activation. So the activation process for like wireless carriers, whether you're transferring from like AT&T to Verizon or Verizon to Visible, whatever carrier you're using, the activation process and the transferring of your phone number, if you want to keep it, is kind of convoluted just because there's not a really good set standard of how you're supposed to do that from carrier to carrier. And depending on who you're with, it might take longer or shorter amount of time, or they might give you more pain. It becomes like a hassle. So that's usually the biggest bottleneck in our onboarding. But after that, usually it's very, very simple for somebody to just, put auto pay, and they have amazing service month to month.
It makes it simple.
Yep.
Yeah, without the brick and mortar. So I guess if we were to step into like your world now, like what is your role there?
So my role at Visible, I'm an iOS developer. So I work on the iOS app of Visible. So that's where people can go in, browse the different categories of phones that we offer that are compatible with our network, and provide new features, enhancements, bug fixes. I'm working on something that hopefully will reduce the friction that we have with the onboarding process. So hopefully that's something that's going to go out live in September, October. So that should hopefully make it a lot even more simple to get into our network.
And so from the perspective of like your day-to-day, how do you operate? How do you do those things? How do you fix bugs?
So my day-to-day, usually it starts with, doing a stand-up with my team, essentially having a group of us kind of give a call out of what we did the day before, what we're planning on doing today, and any other like blocking issues that we might have, whether it means somebody's not delivering something that we're dependent on it, or we don't have this requirement figured out. And if there's a high pressing issue, then that boils up in that call. So essentially there we figure out like, okay, this ticket is associated with this backend service or this front end service. This is broken. These are the scenarios to recreate it. Now go figure out how to fix that, how to improve it, whether that means it's coding like new client logic on the front end, which is all just visual, or maybe it's an issue with the back end where I am just getting the bad data and there's a disconnect on between those two services. So that's probably where their issue might be.
So it's a lot of firefighting, right?
Yeah.
So that from the perspective of like, if we were to, I know there's like emotional intelligence, technical development, like there's all these different things in your role. Mm-hmm. What do you think is like the one thing that you would say is a skill set that people need to have if they want to work in this firefighting world that you live in?
Definitely, being able to communicate. It's the biggest skill that you think you might know how to communicate, but the way people talk to each other, the way they understand is so different. Everybody's very different on what they feel is best to get either requirements or understand an issue or being spoken to. So being able to like manage different personalities and being able to like communicate properly is huge, just so you can be able to like really have a connection with that person. And especially now, since all my work is remote, so I'm not going into an office, I'm talking virtually a lot more, I'm in a lot more conference calls. So having that communication is key, and doing that very well through either video calls or like email is essential. So having those services and having that skill set defined is very key.
So what do you think is bad communication?
Bad communication is when,
like, if you could maybe give an example too.
An example. So usually whenever you're just hearing somebody but not really truly listening to them, you're just hearing them speak and you're digesting it, but it doesn't really process. Like you're just there. You're essentially talking to a wall. And then all of a sudden it's your turn to talk, and then I start talking. That's poor communication, because I'm not really processing whatever issue might be really occurring, or maybe there's a certain detail whenever they're describing it where maybe that's where I really need to ask it one more question and I will truly understand. But if I'm not paying attention and I'm just kind of like there, then that's when I fail to really communicate.
Yeah. So I guess now you've been in your career for, 2 years? Going on 3?
Now 3, yeah. Now it's been 3 years, and that's crazy to say because I feel like I just started.
So what are some of the things that may be different now, year 3, than it was in the beginning?
So at the beginning, I definitely felt the imposter syndrome. Like right out of college, I definitely felt like maybe this is just too good. Like, how am I here? Like, I just graduated. The amount of responsibility that I'm getting given at work and trust, like, I just wasn't ready for all that. And, the mentors that I had at the time really did encourage me, push me, and let me really thrive on my own. So I can figure it out, because they weren't going to handhold me through that journey. So I was really thankful for that. And now, like, I'm more comfortable where I'm at. I know my skill set. I know where I missed the mark in some aspects, and I know where I can improve. And that's where I kind of lean on my team now. Like before, I kind of wanted to just focus on just doing the work myself and not really communicating very well or asking the questions when I needed to. But now, like, I definitely make sure to speak out right away about any concerns or any product issues that we might have, so that way we catch these things a lot earlier in the product cycle, because that's huge.
So I know sometimes people ask the question, if you could go back to your 22-year-old self, what would you give your advice to? But what I want to do is I want to ask you a different way and say, now you do have a team and you're working with people and you're giving them advice. What is the recommendations you give them? Because they are quote unquote equivalent to where you were at starting your career.
Well, it's not even equivalent. I work with people that have even a lot more years of experience than I do. Some of my peers have 5-10 years of experience. So me having to give them direction sometimes is very shocking and surprising. But it's just because you're really knowledgeable in like coding and understanding of iOS development doesn't really mean that you have the business acumen to associate both of those things together and put it together. Because if you don't really understand the product and what we're striving for, then you won't really know how to build the solution that really will fit there. So that's where I try to give the big picture overview of the product or what the goal of the project is, so that way we don't get hit snags and issues that might not be pertinent for that particular project.
Okay, so I guess everybody has their own hats to wear. Because everybody's doing a different role. Yeah. And so do you ever find that somebody wants to be management but is more of a technical person? Like, how do you develop those skills to be both? Or is it you pick one and you move with that in that direction?
Well, I think it's very it's very personal. Like for me, I want to say that I want to stay technical for at least another 2 years before I make that jump. So this is where I communicate with my manager to see what he does. What is he doing day to day that I'm not doing to improve into those processes. So, being able to work with a team, being able to lead a group of engineers, being like the lead engineer would be like the next step. So depending on what your career path is, if you don't want to stay too long in the technical route, then start learning how to like manage people. Like start learning what are the things that your manager is doing for you that you don't even know, are aware about. Like my manager fights day in, day out for the team. He's like shutting down a lot of projects that are like out of scope, or maybe there's this big thing that's being escalated by a lot of different people. He's like, no, it's not this group. This other group has to do it. So there's a lot of other things that happen in the background that you just might not be aware of as a developer.
Do you think there's a way to build those skills outside of work, or do you have to just wait your turn as you grow your career?
No, I mean, if you wait, you're just going to miss the mark in your career growth. Developing those skills for me happened very early on, I wouldn't say, by being involved with the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers in undergrad. You know, when I started with the group, it really did open up my eyes of how much more I can do as an individual and like in just my career and like what engineering actually meant. So like I develop a lot of the, I want to say people skills and like management skills and time management skills, leadership skills throughout like different projects that I did for the community. And even now, like sometimes when I'm involved here in the Dallas professional chapter. So like all those things have helped my career and like have put me in a place where I'm 25. I'm probably the youngest developer in my group. But a lot of people give me a lot of respect. They look up to me. They seek for advice. And like they just think like, wow, like I thought you just had more experience. I'm like, no, I'm just starting out. I'm just figuring it out as I go.
So has anybody ever told you like you're wasting your time being involved in organizations?
It depends. I mean, it depends what you want. Like I have a passion for giving back to the community just because I've gotten a lot from the community. So if I can empower somebody else to, change their mindset of what they can achieve, then I will, be involved in my community or that group to make that happen. Just because that's what happened with me. Like it came advice from one of my mentors, and he's like, no, like, why are you going to drop out of engineering when you just need to push through this one more class and then you're going to be over this obstacle and then you're going to be able to like keep going in this direction. So, if I can be that, I'll definitely stay involved in those groups. And, it's not just a good way to develop yourself as with skill sets, but also like your network, like the people, the different individuals you'll meet, their career paths. It's just really welcoming and like you form all the strong bonds. Like I'm very proud to say that I can go anywhere around the US and I'm pretty sure I can find somebody that I've met through one of the many conferences that I've gone to, and like just hit them up out of the blue and we're like right all back to where we were, whether it meant like years or months back since last time we talked.
You can always pick it up. Mm-hmm. And so from the perspective of like, I heard you mention to stick with it, you're gonna get through this. Mm-hmm. What was that about? Like what story is behind that?
For me, it was, engineering for me was a decision in high school where I was like, what do I want to do with my college degree? And I really didn't have an idea. So I was like focusing on what I liked. And at the time I liked technology. I liked the first iPhone launch, and I was just very intrigued by it. How did this little device all of a sudden get so smart? And then I was like trying to figure out what path would get me to work on things like that. And computer engineering just happened to be one of them. It could have easily been computer science, but I decided to go to the engineering route just because I felt the engineering just had this, like backing, this, this word, whenever you say, there's a lot of like, positive connotation behind it. So I wanted to go that route. And once I jumped in and started learning about like different, simple concepts of engineering, the different math that you have to like take to get to like more advanced classes and actual like for your degree, it really was like overwhelming. Like I just felt like this is too much. I can barely do this. Like I'm already struggling, year one. How am I going to make it a year 4? So it was just really like, I felt like this undertaking was just on my own, but really a lot of my peers were in the same boat. They had the same doubts, the same fears. Yeah. It took somebody that was like about to graduate and was like, no, man, like I was there. You just need to work harder. You just need to like keep pushing. It might seem impossible now, but like once you're grabbing that diploma, you're going to look back and like reflect like, man, like honestly, that wasn't that bad.
And I guess for anyone who's maybe watching and, year 2, year 3 and thinking about like, maybe I should quit. Mm-hmm. Like, do you have any additional advice that you would give them?
Well, if you're really unhappy with your degree decision if you're really unhappy with it and you really don't like what you're doing, you really think that it's not just the coursework that is hard, but you just really don't have a passion for it, then it makes sense to make the switch earlier on. I've had peers that did that. But if you think it's just a matter of like, no, like if I just give it a little bit more effort, or maybe I'm doing this that's taking time out of my day-to-day to really be successful in that class or that course, then, maybe you should reconsider what you're doing and like figure out your time management, and then you can actually achieve what you want. But it depends. Like, you really have to do some self-searching, because I had a buddy that, went on the business route. And then year 3, he switched over to engineering and did electrical engineering, and he graduated, and he was very successful, and he was way more happy with that decision. Yeah, it took a lot longer. He didn't graduate in 4 years, but he was way happier with the decision and like what he was going to be working on and doing afterwards.
So it took him five years to graduate, but he was happier, right? And at the end of the day, he pursued what he wanted to pursue. So you have your degree in computer engineering. Mm-hmm. Is it what you thought it was going to be? The expectations versus reality question.
So, when I was in the degree, going through college and taking the coursework, it was very fundamental, like a lot of theory, a lot of math, a lot of low-level understanding of really big concepts that really make up technology as we know it. And when I was in doing my undergrad career, the things that I was foreseeing myself working on was going to be like maybe like architecting an operating system for a different device, maybe architecting a new chipset, defining things like that, which is very common in a computer engineering degree. But what I started learning around like my 3rd year in college was that I really enjoyed more the process of programming and like being able to connect, this file that literally just has words and symbols. And all of a sudden now it's making this piece of hardware actually do something, whether it means writing out hello world on the screen for the first time.
See in, see out.
Exactly. So doing that just really sparked another interest. I was like, man, like, do I really want to keep focusing on the more electrical engineering part of computer engineering, or like more of the computer science part of computer engineering? And that's where my shift focused to computer science in my field, since I kind of had the best of both worlds.
I'm curious, do you think there's a limited career path if somebody picks computer engineering software versus hardware?
No, I think it's very flexible. At least for the computer engineering degree, since you learn the best concepts out of electrical engineering, and I want to say some of the fundamental concepts of computer science, whether you want to stick with like hardware design and defining that architecture, that's a very well career. Intel is going to be here for ages. It's not going to, disappear tomorrow. You can definitely make a long lasting career there. But if you want to go into like software development, like nothing in the hardware world will work without the software. So like we need people that know how to write the code and understand how to make this box or chipset, turn on and off in certain ways, to send the right signals to, do what it needs to achieve in a bigger, system. So
from that perspective, I mean, you have to be different type of people to go software versus hardware. Mm-hmm. At least that's my, I guess, thought process, right?
Yeah, like you'll either know you like it or you don't. It's very, whenever we started taking back in college some of my software engineering courses, you clearly saw people that hated it.
I know. I took a class. I hated it.
Yeah, you either hate it with a passion, or you're just very, like intrigued by it. Like you're like, whoa, like I can do this by just writing a few little things, and you just kind of get into it, and then you just start learning more and more what you can do with it.
Do you think this career path caters to one person versus another? So I guess what I'm trying to get out of this question is, who is this career path for, and who is it not for?
So if you dread the idea of sitting on the desk and writing out code, this is definitely not for you. If you think that, it would be better to be something more hands-on, where you're building something with your hands, or, like constructing it, like maybe something the mechanical engineer might do, or you think that you need to see it, probably not for you, because the computer engineering route, or at least the software engineering side of it, it kind of takes a little bit of like mental envisioning of what the final product will be. You
have to be creative to a certain extent.
Exactly. So like, the tools that I use for my work makes it easy, right? Like I write a piece of code, and then all of a sudden I hit run, and all of a sudden I get a preview of what I just wrote. So like, if sometimes you can't do that because whatever you're writing might be very complex or very low level and doing some type of computation, and if you can't envision yourself going through different calculations that way, then it will be kind of hard for you to do anything a little bit more complex.
So I guess the phrase that comes to mind as you're describing that is strategic thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
How do you develop strategic thinking, I guess, in your career path or in your college?
That's, I feel like that's kind of the purpose of that degree. At a high level, yeah, it's teaching you like math and stuff like that, engineering concepts, but really it's forcing you to think about, like, take this problem, this is the parameters, how do I get Y as a solution? And like, you got to think, okay, out of my toolbox of different theories, which is the right one? Which one will make getting there the best? It's something that your degree will definitely give you without you maybe even realizing it. But once you're in your career, it definitely takes, depending on the technology you're picking with or using, it definitely takes a mentor sometimes to like really give you that bigger insight of like, okay, maybe this approach that you went with, works, but these are the reasons why it might fail, or these are the reasons why it's inefficient. And it takes somebody that has a little bit more experience to really like point that out right away. For you, it's like, it works, that my job is done. But really, it takes somebody else to really kind of give you that insight. And then you start learning from that experience. So then like, okay, I wrote it this way once. Now that I know this extra information, these are the reasons why it's not as great. Next time, I know this is better.
Yeah. I think the advice that I give people is you have to learn how to zoom out, right? Mm-hmm. There's only so much you're focused on. I think from our degree plans, like that we're taught to be technical leaders, right? Technical experts. And you're just so caught up in your little thing, but you fail to realize that you're sitting on a table. So you need to zoom out, and then you need to realize that you're in an apartment. You got to zoom out.
Exactly.
And you got to realize that you're in a certain city. You got to zoom out. And I think people are just too caught up on the idea of, well, this is my little job, and I want to do a really good job, and I did my job, and I'm done. But if you can't just take a step back and see it from above, it's going to be really hard for you to develop that strategic thinking. From the perspective of like, you mentioned you do a lot of community outreach, you do a lot of mentoring. What are some of the questions that you think is like common with people who are pursuing computer science or computer engineering, who tend to ask you like this versus that?
The most common questions are usually like, what do you do? Like, what can you do with programming? Like, it's such a hard question to answer because you can do anything. Really, like, programming is so versatile. Like, you can do anything you want. You can create a website, you can create an app,
a microwave.
You can, the way a microwave works is because there's a program that's saying, hey, as soon as I click 2, that means it's 2 minutes, and I need to run this machine to like heat up the food for 2 minutes.
Things like cameras are crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's everything. Like everything now that we know as this world is behind. There's either a chipset or there's a program that's making it work. So programming, it's very versatile. It depends what you want to do with it. There's a different career paths you can go with it. So it's more like what interests you the most. Like for me, it was like phones. Like for me, when the first iPhone launched, I was just so intrigued that also like it was so different than anything else that was out in the market, and I just wanted to like play with it and like find a way to like make it do other things that it wasn't programmed to do originally. So at the time, the whole thing was to like jailbreak your phone, essentially hack it. Yeah. And learning that I can just take somebody's program, they figured out a way to like get into that system and
break it.
Yeah,
and then I broke my phone.
And exactly, and then you can I start downloading other apps that maybe Apple doesn't approve of, but they do really cool things. So programming is just really, really flexible.
So I guess for the person who's on the fence on saying whether or not I want to pursue this, what are some of the questions that they should be asking themselves to make that decision?
So if you maybe think that at one point in your career you might want to do something with hardware, computer engineering is definitely the right choice, because it's going to give you the electrical engineering background, at least some of it, that's going to make you successful in that, without having to learn everything from scratch again. Even though there's a lot of on-job learning that I do for my role. If you think that, I don't want to mess with the hardware, I just want to mess with just the zeros and ones, writing out the code, then computer engineering can also be a good route for it, since you kind of get that experience. But maybe a better option would be computer science, since that's the main focus of it. There's a lot more theory behind computer science, and like what makes algorithms effective, that you might miss in a computer engineering degree.
You think you would ever switch your career path?
Well, I kind of have. So like I started my master's, so I am pursuing a computer science master's. Because I felt that maybe there's some concepts about computer science that maybe I was lacking, or there's new things that I just kind of need to learn from a computer science perspective to really learn how maybe machine learning and artificial intelligence truly works. How do those concepts now work nowadays? And a lot of the concepts that we know as of AI and ML, they're really old. Like they weren't discovered. The technology, the hardware has finally caught up to where now things are fast enough and they can be processed in a way that makes it possible.
Which is crazy to think, because like you can't outstudy the advances in technology. Mm-hmm. Like you can't go to school enough to be able to keep up with everything going on. From the perspective of somebody who is watched this video and they want to get some final advice, anything else that you would say, encouraging words or anything along those lines?
For me, it's just, push through any challenges that you might face. Find mentors, find other people that are also in the struggle with you. For me, college wouldn't be the journey it was without the people that I was with at every step along the way. Without my friends at the time, I felt like some of the classes would have been twice as hard. They were able to, fill in the gaps wherever I might have missed in a lecture. Maybe I was able to provide better clarifications on certain things that maybe they didn't understand. And we, collaborated. And really, that really helped me push through. And then once you're working, honestly, you might feel that you're not ready, but really, you really are. You're more than prepared. It's just different learning. You just gotta, learn your new environment, learn who's the right individuals to talk to in your organization, learn the product at a high level. And then, that's really going to give you the right mindset and tools and, people that you can talk to make you successful in your career, and go along that journey until the next step.
Perfect. Well, Andres, thank you so much for taking the time to, share with the people on the YouTubes. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the community, and just, keep doing what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. I'm just excited to see you continue to grow. So I'll make sure to link his information on the description on the YouTube, and I'll let you guys connect with them. If you guys have any additional questions, please let me know. I'm going to bring in more guests similar to Andres, who can share their backgrounds and their perspectives and their career paths. And just make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you guys are asking questions. Every like is going to help this channel grow. And if you guys can just share, I really appreciate it. So thank you all.
All right.